All right, we are starting with our geometry unit today, and it is hopefully going to start off pretty easy. We're going to start off with area of squares and rectangles. All right, and today is September 1st. All right. Once again, I only have 15 minutes to get this done, so I'm going to try to be as detailed as possible, but also quick. When you're talking about area, you're talking about how much it takes to cover the surface. So, like, you usually think about your yard or like a carpet, and it's talking about how many squares it takes to fill up that space. So, for example, if your bedroom is 10 feet by 12 feet, then you would try to figure out, if you're finding the area, you're asking yourself, how many 1 foot by 1 foot squares can I fit into that area? And that's what area is trying to figure out, is how many squares would it take to fill up that space? Which is why when you find the area of something, you say, 36 feet squared. That's where that's coming from, because it's how many squares it takes to fill it up. All right, so we do a quick definition. Area of a figure is the number of squares needed to cover a space. All right, so once again, if you needed to cover the floor of your bedroom in squares, you would be wondering how many squares does it take to fill it up? And you know how big your squares are based off what unit you're using. So like if you're doing, you know, 6 inches by 12 inches, then you'd have 1 inch by 1 inch squares. That's how you figure out how big those squares need to be. So for example, if we have this shape right here, let's see how good I can be. All right. And then just draw your lines going across. All right, so sometimes they'll give you a shape and they won't have numbers with it, but these are called units. All right, and this is what I mean by how many squares it takes to fill up the ends or the bottom of your surface. So, like, even though there's no numbers here, I can still figure out the area of this shape just by counting the units. So, along this side, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, this is 7 units. All right. And then this way, 1, 2, 3, 4 is 4 units. So my shape is a 7 by 4 unit shape. And even though I counted this one, this square going across, and I counted it going up, you still do that. Like, it doesn't, even though you've already counted it, you still count it when you're going up or across. Now, the formula for area of a square or rectangle is area equals length times width. And when we're writing the formula, make sure the A is capital and then the other two letters are lowercase. But obviously, you don't just want to do a regular L, because then it looks like a 1. So make sure you're doing a cursive L so that you can tell its length. All right, and so then you just plug it in. Well, what was the length of my shape? Well, the length of my shape was 7. And then the width of my shape was 4. The dot, I'm not sure if everybody knows this yet, but the dot means to multiply. A lot of times now that you're in middle school, we're going to start using letters for a lot of things, so we don't put an X, because then it might look like a letter, not a multiplication sign. So we use a dot a lot of the time. So when you see that dot, it just means to multiply. So now you're just doing 7 times 4, and that would be 28 units squared. And remember, when you're doing area, your answer is always going to be squared. And by squared, I mean to the second power. And we're going to get into exponents and all that stuff. But just know that when you're doing area and your answer, you have to have a 2 up here to show that I'm talking about area and it means squared. Okay, so let's do a couple examples. The main thing to remember is that your formula is going to be length times width. That's super important to remember for rectangles and squares. And eventually we're going to do some of these with decimals and fractions, but we're sticking with whole numbers for right now. Later in the year when we go over decimals and fractions, we'll bring back area so that you can see some problems that have decimals and stuff. All right, so if we do, doesn't have to be perfect. So let's say this is 7 feet. Let's say this is 12 feet. Okay. Now with multiplication, it really doesn't matter which one comes first. Commutative property, you can do whichever one you want first because multiplication 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2. So if you're worried about which one's the length, which one's the width, don't worry about that because really with multiplication, it's not a huge deal. So if I'm finding the area of this rectangle, remember my formula is length times width. Remember the dot means to multiply. Don't let that confuse you. All right. So then you just plug in your numbers. Well, what is my length? Okay. Well, I'm looking at my shape. My length is 12. Once again, if you said the length was 7, that'd be totally fine. Just make sure you use both numbers is the point. All right. And then times my width, which is 7. And then you just multiply those two out. 12 times 7 gives me 84 feet squared. And that would be your answer. So every time when you do area of squares and rectangles, you're just multiplying the two numbers they give you. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say we're going this way now. All right, and let's say this one is 15 meters. And we'll say this one is 4 meters. Okay, and the question says, what is the area of this rectangle? All you gotta do, plug in your numbers, length times width. You're gonna hear me say that a million times, length times width, length times width. All right, now we plug in our numbers. All right, my length, we'll say, is 15. My width is 4. If I multiply 15 times 4, I get 60 meters squared. All right. You also might see it written as 60, like literally written out. Or it might say 60 square meters. Okay, so any of those things all mean the same thing. Okay. All right, we're going to do 2 more. You're running out of room, don't worry. So am I. All right, let's do number 3. All right, and this time I'm not going to draw a picture. I'm actually going to write it out. So a square has a side length of 6 inches. Find the area. All right, so this one, it only gives me one number, which might confuse some of you, but you got to pay attention to the details. They told you that the shape is a square. So what's that mean? Well, hopefully you realize that that means it's a square, all the sides are the same. So if one side is 6, well, that means the other 3 sides are also 6. But what I don't want you to get confused about is, yes, all 4 sides are the same, but remember, for area, you only need 2 sides. So what I'm saying is, don't do 6 times 4 because you don't need all 4 sides. You're still doing length times width. Okay, so you're still plugging in just 2 numbers. All right. So what is my length? Well, they told me my length is 6. Well, remember it's a square, so my width is also 6. So if I do 6 times 6, well, that tells me it's going to be 36 inches squared. Okay, so don't let it confuse you. If you only see one number in the problem, that probably means it is a square. Okay, all right, one more. And as you can see, like I'm at a room 2, so don't worry, we're finished. All right, let's say for this one, I'm just going to draw a picture due to my lack of room. All right, let's say they tell you that this side right here is 8 yards. All right, and in math, when you don't know something, they put a letter there. Usually it's an X, so I'm going to put an X right here. Okay, I don't know what that side is. They haven't given me a number for that side, but they did give me some more information. They did tell me, hey, your area needs to equal 48 yards squared. So in other words, I need to figure out what this side right here equals. So remember, we're doing length times width. I've got one of my numbers. I know, fit this in over here, length times width. Well, I'm going to plug in what I do know, just like I've done the past couple examples. But this time, I know my area equals 48. So in place of this A, I'm going to put a 48. All right. I know that my length is 8. Okay. What I don't know is this width. But hopefully you know your multiplication facts well enough. What times 8 is going to give me 48? But if you don't know off the top of your head, all you got to do is the inverse. All right. Well, what's the inverse or the opposite of multiplication? Hopefully you're thinking division, and that would be correct. So if I took what I do have, and if I did 8 into 48, okay, well, what times 8 gives me 48? And hopefully you're saying 6, and that would be correct. So what that means is this missing side over here, X equals 6 yards. Okay, or W, like, because you know this is the width. So I'll write it again. My width equals 6 yards. And just to make sure we're doing that correctly, if I plug this in over here, I would be doing 8 times 6, and that does give me 48. So that is my correct area. Okay. So after watching this video, we're going to do a couple problems on a worksheet, and you're welcome to use the calculator. And if you have any questions, just send me an email. Thanks.